First of all, I just want to say congratulations. You've made it this far. This has been a journey. And I know there's a lot of information, a lot of processing, a lot of questions. But ultimately, over time, those questions, that information will give us clarity. Now we get to the fun part. And it also can be a challenging part because it's always hard to put things down and to put things in writing. But we want to start talking about and putting down on paper some purpose statements. And I think it's going to be so helpful in understanding who God's called you to be. Game changers are constantly fighting for clarity of purpose. A couple of words that I want to highlight in this statement is constantly, meaning there's an ongoing process. Number two, fighting. It is a fight. There's a lot of things fighting for our attention. There's a lot of distractions that can happen. And so we have to fight to take time to focus in on the purpose that God has for our lives. I almost wanted to start singing, we have to fight for our rights. But truly, we have to fight for our purpose. Nobody else is going to fight for us. Ultimately, we've got to take time and write it down. Habakkuk 2:2-3. It says, write my answers plainly on tablets so that a runner can carry the correct message to others. This vision is for a future time. It describes the end, and it will be fulfilled. Ultimately, God would say that you've got to put down on paper what I am putting in your heart. You've got to put down on paper the purpose that I have for your life. And as we put it down on paper, it becomes solidified in us, recognizing that it's always going to be morphing, it's always going to be changing, but ultimately, it starts to give us direction and vision and clarity for where we're going. Writing your purpose is a dynamic process. I can't stress that. I can't state it enough. It is a process. There's a book, Good to Great, by Jim Collins. And it's one of the famous business books, and it helps businesses get clarity on who they are. It helps businesses go from being a good business to a great business. And a huge part of that process is getting clarity. And I love the author, Jim Collins. He talks about the process of getting that clarity. And he says, most organizations and most companies, they'd love to do an offsite retreat for a couple of days, or they'd love to gather their leaders into a boardroom and within a couple of hours get extreme clarity on who they're supposed to be as an organization. He said, but the truth is, it doesn't just take a couple of hours or a couple of days. He said it takes years. I want to say, he said the average company comes up with clarity on who they're supposed to be, their passions and what they can be the best in the world at, and how do they make money based on their services and products. He said it takes the average company, I believe, between 4 and 6 years. He actually uses an example of John Wooden, one of the most successful college basketball coaches of all time, if not the most successful. I mean, John Wooden won championship after championship after championship. He talks about leadership. Do you know that it took John Wooden 15 plus years, I believe it's 16 years, to win his first national championship? Can I tell you, if it took John Wooden 15 years to win his first national championship, it's going to take us a couple of years to get clarity on who we're called to be. And so you got to have grace for yourself. You got to have patience for yourself. You got to have patience for the process, recognizing that it's dynamic. There's some highs, some lows, some moments where you're going to feel extreme clarity. You're going to feel some extreme revelation. But there's also going to be some times where you don't feel that. But we're not going to operate out of our feelings. We're going to operate out of faith. That's what game changers do on the road to purpose. We faith it until we feel it. See, without clarity, sometimes even as we're writing out these statements, our feelings might be like, man, this is a waste of time. Man, that's not who I am. But ultimately, as we keep writing out of faith, as we keep stepping, as we keep taking action, as we keep defining, ultimately our feelings will follow our faith. And we'll start to feel that clarity with who we're called to be. As we're identifying our purpose, the key themes that we've been building around are our gifts and our passions and our stories, and together that helps us get clarity on who we're called to be. I thought I would give you an example from my own life in the process that I've been on. And again, like I've said before, I'll continue to gain clarity. Until I'm dead, God's not done changing me, using me, and clarifying who He's calling me to be. And the same is true with you. But as I look at my life and through different gift assessments, again, this isn't everything, but these are a few things to help give you an example of what we're talking about. Some of the gifts that have come to surface as I've taken different assessments is, number one, this gift of being an apostle, someone who sees the big picture. The Bible talks about different spiritual gifts, and specifically when it comes to leadership, and apostles are able to see and understand how pieces work together. They have a tenacity to see what's needed and to want to be a part of the solution. Teacher, love helping others grow, love trying to take what's complex and break it down and make it practical and understandable. I hope that's what we're able to do even through this training. Leader, over and over these different gifts assessments I've taken. This word leader, somebody who helps bring order and vision and direction to a team or a group of people. These are a few of the gifts that continue to be highlighted as I've taken assessments, as I've had conversations with others, and even, at times I've questioned my own self. But it's amazing how others who know us, who love us, who want to see the best in us, they call out that gold. They call out the gifts. And so in my process, these are the gifts that continue to come to the surface. Some of my passions are to really grow as a leader, grow and develop. Again, I was, you'll see in my story, exposed to leadership development at a young age. And I heard this phrase, leaders are learners. And when your learning stops, your leadership stops. And I've had this passion to grow and develop and to help other leaders grow and develop. Because I've seen not everybody's had the same opportunities to reach their full God-given potential. My passion is to see change happen in under-resourced communities, people, and leaders. Again, because of my experiences, which you'll see in my story, I've grown up in a community that hasn't had the same opportunities. I know this, being from the community, there's gold. There's incredible leaders. There's incredible people. There's incredible hope. But without access to opportunities, without access to vision and resources, those same people don't have the same opportunities. I have a passion to see individuals and teams maximize their potential. And I think it's because when I've seen some of the challenges in our world, I also see that we have the capacity to change those challenges. We have the capacity to be a solution to somebody else's need. I think about, where I live, I have a lot of lawn to mow. And we have a riding lawnmower. And this riding lawnmower, when it's working right and when it's turned all the way up, this riding lawnmower allows me to cut my grass effectively and efficiently. And I've, over the years, tried to teach my boys how to use the riding lawnmower, and even one time got my wife on the riding lawnmower. And typically when I put them on the riding lawnmower, I put it up to about half the speed, half the power, because I don't want them to get hurt and to be all over the place. But the truth is that half the power and half the speed, it doesn't cut very well. The results don't look as good. It takes twice as long for them to cover the same amount of space. And I feel like I've seen too many people living their life at half the power, half the speed, not leveraging everything God's given them. And I know this, when we leverage it, when we live on purpose, when we live with intention, amazing results happen. Change happens. We experience the joy and the fruit of living out the purpose that God has in our lives. So that's a passion of mine. My story. I've shared some of my story throughout these different segments. Basketball was a huge part of my story. I wanted to be a game changer on the court. Through injury, God shifted that focus. My faith became real to me, started to move me in a new direction where I didn't know it at the time, but I would end up starting to give and serve and learn how to lead people, help them in their faith, help them discover their gifts, their talents, their passions. Lived in an under-resourced community, experienced the crime, the violence, the poverty, saw hopelessness, and there's something in me that wants to be a part of the solution. At a young age, was exposed. Never forget going to a leadership conference in the 6th grade, listening to world-class speakers stand on this world-class stage, and started to get a vision for what my life could look like. All of those gifts and passions and story over the years have taken on different statements and phrases. One of the statements that started to resonate with me several years ago was, I want to maximize the God-given influence in others for God-sized impact in the world. I want to help maximize. I want to see people live to their full potential, because I know that will lead to maximum impact, maximum output, change. It'll help people win wherever they're called to work and live and lead. I narrow down this phrase even further, and I call people who maximize their God-given influence for maximum impact game changers. And that's why we're here, because we're game changers. From an organizational, professional level, I say I want to champion leaders who champion change. All of it for me has to do with people reaching their full potential and helping people influence the world based on how God has wired them and equipped them. I love what Ryan Holiday says. He says, think progress, not perfection. I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, and so a 1 is known as a perfectionist. There's another word for it called a reformer, somebody who wants to see change. I prefer the word reformer, but I've got some perfectionist tendencies in my life. And sometimes I can allow perfectionism to get in the way of progress. And the truth is, perfectionism is the enemy of progress. And so if we're going to make progress on our purpose, we've got to get rid of the perfectionism and say, you know what? We're going to write down what we know today. And we're going to keep processing and gaining clarity around it as we move forward. Because this is what we know. Our gifts are God-given. Our passion is God-inspired. And our story is God-ordained. I want you to remember that. Your gifts are God-given. Your passions, they're not from you. They're inspired by God. And ultimately, your story is ordained by God. A couple of steps to help us grow in our purpose. Number 1, which is what this whole course has been about, it's really been a discovery process. A process to help you discover what's already inside of you. It's really to uncover what God has already placed inside of you. But number 2, as we move forward, it's to really start to develop. Develop your gifts, develop your passions, develop your story, develop your purpose statement. The best thing we can do is take what we've discovered, start to develop it, and then ultimately deploy it. Share it with the world. Your purpose becomes more clear when you use it to contribute to the world. Your purpose becomes more clear when you deploy it. It's actually the more you deploy it and help others, the more you develop it. And the more you discover new things about who God's called you to be. I think everybody at some point in time, you've got to make a decision. You've got to make a commitment. And this is the commitment statement I would invite you to share and say. And I'd invite you to really, from your heart, make a commitment to living on purpose and leveraging your influence for the good of others. If we all do that, our world will look different. And we'll join Jesus in his purpose to change the world. Denzel Washington, an actor, he says, at the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. I love this by somebody who's accomplished so much and who's done so much. But he knows that it's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about leveraging your influence. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better, and it's about what you've given back. My hope and prayer is that we lean in to get clarity on our purpose, not for ourselves, but for the purpose of God on our lives, which is what God wants to do in us, but ultimately what God wants to do through us. You're a game changer. God has a game-changing plan and purpose for your life. And I'm praying that you keep taking steps to live out his game-changing call that's unique to who you are.